Sup everyone, I'm Caius. You may know me from stuff I've made for the Unreal Engine Marketplace, the co-developer of Mariposa and the Galaxy Man, which free demo is on Steam now, free to play, and also the attempt at remaking Genshin Impact in Unreal Engine 4, which went... we'll just say that. Anyway, I am here today to tell you all about the new game I've started working on. Outside of doing my normal work, I watch a lot of video game devlogs, especially obviously ones for games made in Unreal Engine 4. It's honestly like probably the main thing I do for fun or relaxation, just because I love seeing just the stuff people manage to come up with, the things other people do, and that's a big part of what inspires me to keep working on my own stuff, is seeing what other people create. Some of my favorite devlogs to watch are Arcadian Rift by David R.B., Sovereign by Sovereign Dev, and Project Feline by Raymond Cripps. But I also really wish there was just a lot more devlogs out there of games, especially games made in Unreal Engine. So I wanted to contribute to that with my new game and share my process and hopefully inspire some other people the way a lot of these developers have inspired me to work. As for the game I'm making, my favorite type of game has pretty much always been turn-based Japanese-style RPGs, whether it be Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, Persona, and obviously the Trail series, which I'm kind of obsessed with. It's been my favorite thing to make for a long time. I initially basically started proper game development in RPG Maker, and that's where I learned a lot of basic game design, which was an interesting way to start because it doesn't have a lot of the complexity of something like Unreal Engine or Unity, which sort of means that you're forced to make a well-designed game rather than one with a lot of fancy bells and whistles when it comes to programming. So the game I'm going to be making is a turn-based RPG, very much in the style of classical Final Fantasy type games. I really love how these games, because they've been around for so long, there's a consistent formula to them, or consistent sort of template to them, but there's so much room to take and twist and turn it your own way. Those of you who know me know that for a while now, I've been developing a plugin for Unreal Engine called Omega Game Framework, which is essentially a plugin for handling a lot of the heavyweight coding for RPG-style games that have a lot of data, that have different skills and attributes and stuff like that. And I wanted to put it to the test with this as well and see how well it holds up in a actual RPG. Omega has gotten a lot of use already, as it's being used for Mariposa and the Galaxy Man, but that's a 3D platformer. That wasn't really what it was designed for, and so it was used somewhat abnormally for that. This is much closer to the type of thing I want to use it for. At this point, I have about 5 years in Unreal Engine and way more than that in just designing games in general, so I figured it's time to put this all to use towards the type of game I would want to make. The story of the game is about a parent and child living in modern day when they get through a series of events. They get pulled into a fantasy world with, the trappings of magic and elves and orcs and trolls and all that sort of stuff. So it is an isekai RPG. It's definitely got influence from some isekai anime, like I'm a big fan of Konosuba and stuff like that. But I'd say tonally it's a lot closer to something like the Chronicles of Narnia than it is a lot of anime isekai, because I think a lot of anime isekai, especially right now, are sort of, there's a lot of self-parody going on, a lot of sarcasm in the way they're made, which isn't bad in and of itself, but I'm wanting to do something a little more sincere, a little more, not in like a deadly, brooding, serious way, but in a way where it takes a story, a little more seriously, a little more genuinely. So Narnia, I think, is a fairly more anime Narnia. You can kind of think of it as. One of my ideas is I really wanted to put more focus on the world building and making sure the world kind of makes sense within itself, and also giving sort of a reason as to why there is this sort of parallel world and why there's the connection between the real world and the fantasy world, which is something I feel like, at least in my experience, a lot of isekai stories don't do a ton. I say a lot. This isn't totally my idea. In fact, a lot of the initial ideas for this actually came from my friend Inkrose as part of a writing group that we're in. And so it's mostly been kind of us brainstorming ideas together, and then I've been sort of heading the direction of where it's going. I think the main inspiration for the game very much comes from PlayStation 1 era JRPGs, turn-based RPGs. Not that this is meant to be a sort of a visual copy and paste, or even like a copy and paste of any specific game, but it's more so that what I really like about the PS1 era JRPGs, and other eras did this as well, but I think that's the one where it's most pronounced, is how each one of them kind of follows a very standard formula. You know, you have the towns, dungeons, the overworld, turn-based battles, you have an airship you get later when the game opens up, lots of twists and turns and crazy stuff that happens, but each one of them tackles it in kind of their own way, their own tone and style and mechanics. Though you can see similarities between like the Final Fantasy trilogy and Chrono Cross and Xenogears and Wild Arms and Suikoden and all that sort of stuff. Each one of them is still fairly unique because they have a different take on the battle system or a different take on the tone of the story, things like that. So that's more kind of what I'm going for, is having a game that fits a lot of those formulas, the type of thing people love from classic JRPGs, but not being a copy of anyone, very much being its own thing still. I've spent a lot of time thinking about the visuals and the aesthetics of the game, and it's been a little difficult to narrow it down to one style, because it's wanting to capture a lot of that classic anime isekai style, but also not the silliness of it, if that makes sense. You know, wanting to have it a little more, like I said, sincerity to it. That may not even be the best word, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Genshin Impact is obviously a big example of a nice in-game anime style. I would say, though, the aesthetic that I've ultimately decided currently to go for, and this is fairly subject to change, but is a kind of the PS2 era Tales games. Symphonia, Abyss, especially Vesperia. Sort of like if that style of anime game was made with a more modern budget. So not quite like Tales of Arise. That's not quite what I'm going for. Something a little more in the toon anime. For the actual game, I am using some assets that I made for the Unreal Engine Marketplace in addition to Omega. Although, actually, it would be more accurate to say I made these asset packs for this game, and I then released them on the Marketplace as well. And that's actually why they're on there, because I was initially designing them for this game, and I figured, why not share kind of the code that I'm going to use. So there's basics for turn-based combat, for party members, for zone management. All that stuff is already built into the game, so I kind of have it sort of prototyped out already. And that was really nice to give me a place to start from, and hopefully, as I update those in the future when I make more games, I can just do the same thing, where I can just pull those asset packs, those code packs that I made, right into the game, have them ready to go. They're built in a way that, especially since they're built on top of my Omega game framework, they're highly modular, so you can just kind of pick and choose which ones you want, pull them into your game, and then just kind of easily connect them up and get them working. So I'll probably talk about my process for making games in a later video, but I essentially start with, I think most people do, you start with a prototype is pretty typical. And the prototype, or I guess you could say an alpha demo, prototype demo that I'm going for is basically getting down the overworld and then getting down a town and a dungeon, because those will effectively be the three consistent locations or types of locations in the game. Will be, towns where you can talk to NPCs, get quests, buy items, things like that. Then you have dungeons, whereas actual quest is encountered and you fight enemies and fight the boss and stuff, and the story progresses. And then, of course, JRPG trope is the overworld, where you can travel between the different points. And there will absolutely be an airship in it at some point, so wouldn't be a proper classical JRPG without an airship. Yeah, made a fair bit of work on the prototype already, and what I'm working on now is obviously none of it's meant to be final, but I wanted to do something that's a little bit more than just gray boxing, to where I can have stuff that's like kind of, in a very, very vague sense, representative of what the final version might look like. But so now I have a lot of the core mechanics in, like I have a turn-based battles, I have chests, I have dialogue, I have the overworld and transitioning between it. A lot of that core stuff is in, so it's mostly just right now I'm going to be working on finishing up that prototype. On top of that, I have a Milanote for the project where I have all sorts of reference images and character designs and that sort of stuff. So, and if any of you have not used Milanote or even heard of it, I would strongly recommend it. Not even sponsored. I've seen some people who are sponsored by it. I'm not. But it's a great tool for sort of creating mind maps or organizing just sort of all sorts of details and information on your projects, and especially your creative projects. So I would recommend checking it out if you haven't already. But that's kind of all I wanted to talk about for this initial devlog, especially since I'm still working on the prototype. A lot of the specifics about what I want to do aren't settled yet, and they probably won't be until I actually get around to doing them. But I do want to try to I want to be careful about this, but I very, very much want to try to make these devlogs monthly, have one out every month, kind of show you what I'm working on, keep that inspiration, that spirit of inspiration going, and also hold myself accountable to actually getting this done. One thing is I am working on this in between my other work. I work in game dev primarily, so there's a few different things I'm doing contract work for, and obviously, though it's slowed down to a crawl now because we don't have the funding because the Kickstarter didn't work out, I am still working on Mariposa and the Galaxy Man, though mainly just in like a creative advisor role right now. But yeah, I definitely want to make this a priority as much as I can. If you want to help support me in this, giving a like and subscribe and a comment and all that good YouTube stuff would be appreciated. But also, especially if you're an Unreal developer, if you want to head over to my Studio Syndicate page on the Unreal Marketplace and buy any of the asset packs that I've made, even if you don't think you'd use them right now, if you'd want to support me, that would be the best way to do it. And it's something you can, instead of just the donation or whatever, it's something you can get out of it too. And I would really appreciate that if you would be so kind. But if not, these won't be obviously paid or anything. All free devlogs on the YouTube. So yeah, that's all I got for now. Thanks everyone for watching. I am really excited to get to work on this and to take you all on this journey with me. So yeah, I will see y'all later.